7 goals for oh yeah, Yeskin. I don't know. Does that work? Anyways, thank you everybody for tuning in to the first regular season episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who at one point owned Erik Karlsson in their keeper pools. But one of the guys who does once again own Erik Karlsson in a keeper pool, that's me. Sort of, technically, I own him in a keeper pool, but I'm not going to be allowed to keep him. I think it still counts. Anyways, I'm your host, Elon Dabrowski. With me, as always, the fantasy hockey robot, Brian Combe.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. I might have gotten Alexander Ovechkin. I think there was ample opportunity than 7 goals. Yes. Anyway, good job, as always. And I'm really excited for this brand new episode of the podcast. We have all the information that you are thinking about and wanting to know, and are also not yet thinking about, but should be thinking about from the first few games of action in this NHL season.
Yeah, basically, if you're not yet stressed out about all of the potential players you have to decide if you're going to add or drop, you will be after the show. We've got a huge slew of players we're going to talk about, so it's not going to be our standard Keeping Karlsson like mid-season episode where we can really dig into the players and, you know, what their on-ice shooting percentages have been and things like that. We're just going to try to give you a lot of breadth, maybe not so much depth, but we're going to try to go through a bunch of players and give you our takes after, like 1, 2, or 3 games for most of these guys.
Yeah, it's really tempting to react to what's happening, but I am not, or I'm trying not to react to the wild first few games of the season. It's always good to have like a couple low-stakes streamers at the bottom of your roster, so you have fodder to drop for the most enticing and exciting free agents who have those 1 or 2 real standout games to start the year. But just the thing I need to say before we get started with anything is I am not seriously revisiting or revising any of my projections from before the year started. We know things are wacky to begin the year. Defensemen, goalies, coaches, they're all adjusting to how things are going to work this year for their teams. And forwards are the ones who get to pounce all over that looseness and disorganization that reigns supreme for the first couple weeks. And this isn't just anecdotal or a hunch I have. Let's compare the stats so far this year to last year. We're averaging 3.23 goals per game. That's up to what it's been the last many years at the mid 2.7. So we're seeing like an extra half a goal per game. We're seeing 3 or 4 more shot attempts per game. And, not shot attempts. There's an edit point. We're seeing 3 more shots on goal at least per game. And you can see that in some of the goalie numbers, some amazing performances, and we'll get to that later.
Yes, we're going to get to it all. Brian, I think that there's a couple projections we need to revisit. Maybe like Connor Sheary, maybe Kyle Okposo, but we'll get to them. Okay, before we dig into it all, let's mention that we are presented by DobberHockey.com, the best fantasy hockey website out there. I'm subscribed to Goalie Post notifications, so I get an email every single time a starting goalie is announced. I recommend you do the same. You don't want to get blindsided and find out that your goalie isn't actually playing, but you didn't know it in time, so you didn't switch for your other goalie. So definitely check out Goalie Post and Dobber Hockey and the slew of tools over on Frozen Pools. But okay, Brian, let's get started. Obviously, with the guy who I mentioned at the top, Alexander Ovechkin, 7 goals in 2 games so far. He's playing again tonight, but that game, I guess, has just barely started. But before tonight, by the time you're listening to it, you'll have an extra game. Who knows? Maybe he'll have 10 goals by then. But he had 3 goals against Ottawa, 4 goals against Montreal. Washington's only scored 11 goals, which is actually a lot for 2 games. 7 of them by Alex Ovechkin. Also, 14 shots on goal. Only 1 hit, for what it's worth. If you want to say one negative thing about Ovechkin, usually it's pretty valuable in hits leagues as well. But whatever. Last year, he only had 33 goals and 69 points after putting up 50-plus in the 3 years before that. And you can even say 4 years before that because there was the lockout year where he was on pace for more than 50. Are we ready now to say that last year's Alex Ovechkin was an anomaly and the old Ovechkin is back? Is he maybe even better now that he's so slim?
Yeah, Skinny Ovi is in the house, as he's been lovingly called by some of our patrons in the early days of the season. And I was expecting Ovechkin to bounce back, but I wish I could have predicted this. Of course, it's silly to talk about what this means for his whole season, whether you want to sell high on him. Like, who in your league is going to knowingly buy this high on him? Obviously, you can ask for the farm and try and get it reasonably with all the hype that's surrounding him. But if you can deal him for like someone who's Connor McDavid or Sidney Crosby, I think I still would, but no, you're going to be giving up a whack of shots on goal in the process. I'm not expecting 7 goals every 2 games from Ovechkin, but I'm certainly expecting a return to almost form from previous years. Last year, I'm convinced was way too much of a drop-off than we should have expected, even if you're thinking about Ovi aging.
Yeah, actually, I didn't get to the question that you kind of answered, Brian. I was thinking, like, I wonder if you should sell high. I wonder if it's like crazy to even think about it. If you have Ovechkin, why the hell would you trade him? But, going into your drafts, you would probably have taken Crosby or McDavid before Ovechkin. So maybe now you go to those people and try to make the swap. But like you say, you'd lose a lot of shots on goal. Anyways, maybe it's a silly thing to even think about. So yeah, Ovechkin, obviously, with him doing so well, other people benefit. Who knows? Maybe it's because of Evgeny Kuznetsov that Ovechkin is scoring all these goals, considering Kuznetsov has assisted on all 7 of the goals. So that's 7 assists for Kuz. Only 1 shot on goal and no goals himself. So clearly he's just dishing to Alex Ovechkin and then letting him do his thing. Also, Jacob Vrana has been on that line and he's benefiting. He's assisted on 3 of the goals and could potentially still be available in your league. He also has 6 shots on goal in the 2 games played, only seeing second unit power play time. But do we get the sense that Vrana is going to hold this spot playing with Ovechkin? And if yes, do people need to jump on him ASAP? Like, what kind of upside do you see for him this year if he stays on that line?
As long as skinny Ovi is flying, I can't imagine Barry Trotz is going to touch a thing with that line. You have a brand new line. Why switch it up now? 50 points if Vrana can hold the spot is what I think he's capable of. I do want to see his shot taking continue, though. As we mentioned last week, he had big but inconsistent bursts of shots on goal during his time in the bigs last year. So I want that consistency to start showing. He came in with a bang last year. He had 9 goals in his first 3 games, and it petered out aside from big wow moments every so often. Like I said, so I'm looking for consistency, but we're going to talk about a lot of these guys who you didn't know at the start of the season or were fringe draftable, or there were so many unknowns. Amongst the as yet unknown early season Flyers, Vrana has a real case at this point in the season for making himself your favorite weapon.
Yeah, well, let's compare him to someone else on the same team. A lot of people going into the year, while maybe you're saying that a lot of people didn't know about Vrana, a lot of people were really high on Andrei Burakovsky, thinking he was going to get that spot in the top 6 and really roll with it. He's been on line 2 with Backstrom and Oshie, just like we expected, and he has 1 assist and shot on goal in the 2 games played. And actually, I see that Washington just scored today, and Burakovsky got another assist. Who would you want between Burakovsky and Vrana? Like, going into your drafts, you probably would have wanted Burakovsky. At this point, would you take Vrana over him? Like, if you have Burakovsky, Vrana's in free agency, is that an easy swap for you?
So Burakovsky has already fulfilled those expectations of getting a bigger role. He's already up to 2 minutes more of ice per game compared to last year. Of course, early returns, that's the caveat this whole episode. But his minutes now jibe with what you'd expect a second line forward to see versus the top 9 guy he was last year. I would probably swap Burakovsky out for Vrana for the upside, but it's essentially all based on their current deployment. And I could see Burakovsky being the one closer to getting a turn on the top power play unit for what that may be worth to you. And remember, like, this is a new line. Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Vrana. If they hit a rough patch, you have to think Ovechkin reunites with Backstrom, and then maybe Burakovsky and Vrana shift at some point as part of that equation too.
Yeah, thanks to Jeeves NHL for asking us on Twitter about that Burakovsky for Vrana question. All right, Brian, let's move on to another team that scored a whole whackload of goals to start the season. Let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are currently losing 2-0 to Chicago, but we'll talk about everything leading into tonight. They destroyed Winnipeg 7-2 to start the year. Then they beat the Rangers 8-5 on Saturday. Their 15 goals have been more by committee than Washington's goals, who were all scored by Ovechkin pretty much. So like Hyman, Kadri, Marleau each scored 2, and then there was like 9 people who each scored 1 goal. By the way, everyone, we told you about Hyman being someone that could do something playing with Matthews and Nylander last week, and he's been doing pretty well so far. So hopefully you listened to us. But anyways, yeah, JVR, Marner, Bozak have been playing together at even strength and on the power play. All have 3 points so far. Bozak actually is probably the one you could maybe get. He's owned in only 54% of Fantrax leagues, even though he's on this good line. He was on this good line last year. Like last year, Bozak put up 55 points in 78 games. I feel like no one was projecting him to do this again, but maybe should we expect him to at least match his production from last year? I know, Brian, you used to really not like Tyler Bozak back when he was playing with Phil Kessel, and you would always say whenever he was doing well, like, it's not going to last, and you were usually right. Have you changed your mind on Bozak, or is he still someone to you that should just be a free agent?
So before I even answer that question, I just want to give everyone a tip. If you're assessing what the Leafs have done, if you're like, what am I supposed to do with these 15 goals they've scored? I know it's not going to continue. Remember, they've looked so deadly, but it should normally take them 5 games to score as many goals as they have, rather than the 2 games that they were able to pop 15. So even if you do take, like, you could still take the team's current distribution of how they've scored for each player and each player's share of that scoring. That could be an accurate representation of the season to come, but you also want to consider the numbers they've put up in these 2 games as they look over 5 games, if you want to try and make the most sense out of them. And even then, it still looks a little wonky from early season variants. Just a tip. Anyway, answering your question about Bozak, Elon, why not? Why shouldn't he hit 55? The thing with Bozak is that his on-ice shooting percentage has bounced around wildly over the last 5 years or so. He was up over 10% playing with Phil Kessel for a couple years. Then he fell down to 6% for Kessel's last year in Toronto and another after that. Then he bounced back up again above 10% in on-ice shooting percentage last year. But essentially, for the last 5 seasons, the picture I'm trying to paint of Tyler Bozak is that an average on-ice shooting percentage has eluded him. He's either been a couple points above or a couple points below the league average number that we generally expect. I honestly don't know what exactly that means, but I do know that I have called for some on-ice shooting percentage related regression from Mitch Marner, his line mate. So it would be kind of hypocritical or at least inconsistent of me to spare Bozak the same treatment, which is why I'm actually going to downgrade from the 55 I initially said in my answer, Elon. I'm going to say Tyler Bozak is reliable for 50 points, especially since he's still playing with JVR and Marner. And he has the upside for more is what I'll go with to get him to 55. Obviously, if he can spite the on-ice shooting percentage gods again this year.
Yeah, so, okay. Basically, he's someone that in a really deep league, he should probably be owned. In a shallow league, if you're saying 50 points, it's probably like you're going to add him and dropping depending on if Toronto has a good schedule. They're playing today. They're playing Wednesday. I don't know. And then after that, there's a bit of a break. Another name I want to bring up from the Leafs is Patrick Marleau, who has come out really strong playing with Kadri and Komarov at even strength, and then Matthews, Nylander on the power play. So pretty good deployment, at least on the power play. Leafs have a pretty solid top 9, it's looking, at least in these first 2 games. But yeah, Marleau had 2 goals on 5 shots versus Winnipeg, then a power play assist versus the Rangers and 1 shot on goal. I remember back when I talked to Chris Wassel in the summer series, he suggested this exact scenario. He said Marleau might come out strong for the Leafs, and he said maybe you should draft Marleau and then sell high while you can. And now here you go. He's come out strong. Do you concur that now's the time to sell high on Patrick Marleau? Like, is his value higher now than it will be for the whole rest of the season? Or maybe will he go back to being the 57-point guy that he was like 3 seasons ago?
I am all about selling Marleau high here. If you were one of the people who drafted him likely against our advice, you could reap the benefits. Or you could still think that we're wrong and hold him continuously. But Marleau is on a Leafs line that's going to be tasked. He's with Kadri and Komarov. They're going to be tasked with some of the tougher minutes this year, which is going to be interesting to see because historically, Patrick Marleau has been a guy who doesn't really hurt or help his team significantly in the shot attempts battle. But I guess if he doesn't end up with Kadri and Komarov, where else does he slot into the lineup? Anyway, I'd be looking for more power play specialist type offensive numbers from him, which should put him closer to 50 than 60, to say the least. Even 50 might be a tad generous, depending on how many power play opportunities the Leafs see and how successful and useful Marleau's able to make himself on a top unit.
Okay, yeah. So if you have Marleau, definitely don't drop him at this point. He's doing well, but see what you can get. There's a lot of Leafs fans out there. Who knows what they'd give you? Might as well at least put him on the block and see what offers come in. Then you can tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. We'll give you advice on whether we think you should take it. All right, so let's go to another team that has scored a whole ton of goals, including 2 tonight so far. The Chicago Blackhawks. They started their year with a 10-1 win over Pittsburgh and specifically Antti Niemi, at least to start the game. And then they beat Columbus 5-1 on Saturday. Like I said, they're already winning 2-0 today. Some interesting line combos rolled out by Chicago to start the year for these first 2 games. In game 1, Patrick Kane lined up with Nick Schmaltz and Ryan Hartman. Like, who had in the preseason predicted that Ryan Hartman was going to be on that Patrick Kane line? But anyways, Schmaltz had 2 goals and an assist versus Pittsburgh, but then he got injured at the start of the Columbus game. Unfortunately, he's still injured. We don't know yet exactly how long he'll be out. He's probably worth stashing, I think, if he's still available in free agency. Apparently, Patrick Kane was very high on playing with him. It sounds like Kane wants to play with him. I don't know how much that's worth, but I'd imagine if anyone has some sway in the Chicago Blackhawks locker room in terms of line combinations, it's probably Patrick Kane. Anyways, Alex DeBrincat took that Schmaltz spot after being in the bottom 6 in the first game. No points or shots on goal versus Columbus. And now word is Anisimov will center Hartman and Kane tonight. So that center spot seems to be going all over the place, but Ryan Hartman has been there all 3 games, including today. He was the big surprise to be on that line as he wasn't on our radar at all during the preseason, like I said. And he had 5 points versus the Penguins, then an assist yesterday versus Columbus. We'll see what he does today. Okay, then another player on Chicago who probably a lot of people didn't draft or think about going into the season is Richard Panik, who's been playing with Taves and Saad on the first line. And by the way, Taves, 3 points before today, Saad, 5 points. I guess there's going to be a lot of points to go around when you play against Antti Niemi in your first game. Yeah, Panik has scored in both games and has taken 4 shots in each. He also put up an assist versus Pittsburgh, so he's been really good. Then I'll throw out another name, Patrick Sharp, who's been on the top power play, even though he's been in the bottom 6, and he had a goal and assist in the first 2 games. So, Brian, all of these Chicago forwards that I've mentioned, not named Caves, not named Kane, Taves, and Saad, which ones would you say are like must-adds, and which ones would you leave on the bench? Maybe you could give a quick ranking of these guys.
Sure, okay, so I like both Schmaltz and Hartman quite a bit playing with Patrick Kane. I like them for more points than we've seen Anisimov get from that same spot, even with Artemi Panarin out of the picture. And just any questions about Chicago deployment, I really expect a revolving door through the first couple weeks as Chicago seeks and searches and mixes and matches looking for their optimal lineup. Ryan Hartman is the one who particularly interests me as someone we'd noticed putting up some fantastic shot rates last season, and who's so far continuing in that vein, but of course with considerably better deployment when playing with Patrick Kane. So I'm going to go Hartman first, then Panik, Schmaltz, Sharp, DeBrincat as my conservative Chicago forward power rankings. And if I want to swing hard for my Chicago forward power rankings, I'll reorganize them just a little bit. I'll go Hartman still first, then Schmaltz, Panik, DeBrincat, and Sharp.
Okay, so if you're saying if you swing hard, you're still having Hartman first?
Yeah, he's first either way.
I think I might have Schmaltz first, actually.
Why?
So, because I think he's more likely to be centering that second line. I think Hartman's more likely to get bumped at some point, but we'll see. I have a feeling Schmaltz is going to be there. He was looking really good, but I guess so was Hartman.
That's fair.
Okay. By the way, Dave is mentioning in the chat that they took away the Burakovsky assist. So if you're listening tomorrow and you're like, why did you say Burakovsky got an assist? He didn't. Maybe he didn't. Okay. Let's now go to another team. Let's go to the team that was on the wrong side of that 10-1 shellacking, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Definitely an interesting 3 games so far for them. Matt Murray led in 5 goals on 34 shots against St. Louis to start the season in a 5-4 loss. Then there was that 10-1 loss to Chicago where Niemi led in 4 quick goals. Then he got pulled, and then Murray led in the final 6 goals on 31 shots. So that was one of those things. It's always tricky in fantasy. Do you leave your backup? Do you leave the goalie who's not playing in your lineup, just in case he gets brought in? In this case, people who didn't expect Murray to hurt them or help him that day ended up like destroying a lot of people's matchups. I don't know, Brian, do you have a quick take on that strategy? Like when you get what I'm asking, right?
Yeah, it depends what you need. Like you would want to, if you want to protect your goalie stats, then no. Depending on whether it's the starter or the backup, of course. You can have a little more faith in starting Matt Murray when he's not scheduled to start than starting Antti Niemi when he's not scheduled to start. Or I like to usually go for it. I put my guys in there, especially when I'm looking for games to play. I think you manage it. You just pretend what would I want if they are starting and make sure you do the same thing, even if your guy isn't supposed to get the nod.
Yeah, I guess there's examples on either side, right? Like we had this bad Murray situation, but then we also had Yaroslav Halak. I think it was in the first game of the year. Like Grice really blew it, and then Halak came in and stopped all the pucks for the rest of the game. And then today, actually, Chad Johnson sucked on Buffalo, and then Leonard came in and stopped all the pucks, after he came in. So hard to say. Anyway, okay, back to Pittsburgh. So first of all, Niemi sucks. Right, we actually had a really fun patron cast last Thursday where we were discussing Niemi before the game started, and then it was really fun as the game started, just seeing goal after goal against Niemi, just confirming my prediction from the preseason that Niemi won't be in the NHL by the end of the season. That's my prediction. Anyway, okay, let's talk about a bunch of these Pittsburgh guys. So first of all, Niemi, like I said, forget him. How did Pittsburgh not claim Calvin Pickard when Vegas dropped him? They clearly need a backup. They had a chance there. We'll get to Pickard later. Okay, Connor Sheary, Brian, let's talk about him. He got demoted to the bottom 6 during that Chicago 10-1 loss, and he stayed there on Saturday, and then he's been skating as an extra at today's practice, apparently, so he couldn't even be scratched for the next game. Not good for Connor Sheary. He started the season playing with Crosby and Gensel. We thought he had a good chance to repeat his numbers from last year, but now it's kind of starting to look like last year's playoffs, at least at the start. Very nervous about him. I think I'm changing my projections, so I'll be interested to hear what you say about him. Then on the other side, the guy taking his spot has been Brian Rust, who is playing now with Crosby and Gensel. He put up 2 assists in that last game where he played with them to go along with his 2 assists in the first game of the season. He also got second unit power play time in the last game. So my question to you, should people be rushing to drop Connor Sheary, and or should people be rushing to add Brian Rust Do you think this will last? If it does, is Rust someone that needs to get on people's rosters immediately? What kind of upside do we see with him?
Very bad news for Connor Sheary. I was going to say worse news for his owners, but no, it's probably personally worse news for Connor Sheary, of all people. I added him the game that he was demoted for, like hours before that, thinking I was brilliant. Didn't work. If you're looking at Brian Rust instead, though, I would not swap Sheary out for Rust because, as we've said previously, Brian Rust in that spot, even next to Crosby, is still only reliably good for about half a point per game, while Sheary still maintains a lot more upside. I have to think that the longer term vision for Sheary is to get him back involved in the top six, though at the same time, by my count, this is the third time in 3 seasons that he's dropped out of that spot for one reason or another. I would rather hold my breath on Sheary than running to Rust, or add a more compelling free agent than Rust if I'm to drop him. I think you can do better on your free agent wire.
I don't know. I think I might have to do my second respectful disagreement of the night. Playing with Sidney Crosby, there's not many players who I think like immediately launch someone into fantasy relevance, but playing with Sidney Crosby, I think that's one of those guys, and Brian Rust is definitely someone that interests me at this point. We'll have to see. We'll revisit next episode.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we talked about before what he was able to accomplish with Crosby, even in that plum spot, and it was not a lot more than a 45-point pace. So yeah, great deployment, but some guys you have to adjust for what they've been able to do in the past in that spot. But yes, you were very respectful in your disagreement, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, small sample size also, in like how much time has Rust really played with Crosby, and also we don't know. There's also Jake Gensel as part of the equation, and I'm sure the three of them haven't played very much together. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm excited for Rust. I might take a flyer on him. Another name I'm curious to know if you would take a flyer on, Brian, is Olli Määttä, someone I remember you used to love on the podcast. I think you have to go back like 3 seasons ago on Keeping Karlsson. You were telling people, hey, everyone, I got a secret. This guy Olli Määttä is going to be really good, and you should be grabbing him, especially in your keeper leagues. He had 29 points his rookie season, which is pretty decent for a rookie defenseman, but he fell out of favor hard in fantasy, and it seemed like on the Penguins, right? He had so many injuries, and last year he had only 7 points in the 55 games he did play. But this year, coming out strong. 1 goal, 1 assist versus Nashville, 2 goals and 1 assist overall. His ice time also went up to 21 minutes in the last game after being in, sub 20 before that. Could he become fantasy relevant this year? Should people be looking at Olli Määttä?
No, they shouldn't. I don't remember loving him as much as you said I loved him. There was a time where he was getting some surprise power play deployment in that rookie season where we said, we'll see where this takes us. But I think we started him with a clean slate the next season, saying you don't want him unless you know he's getting power play time. And that's essentially how his career has played out. He averaged 18 minutes a game last year and had only played 16 and 17 minutes in his first 2 games respectively before seeing 21 minutes in that Saturday night contest with Nashville. But before you read into that as a deployment bump for Olli Määttä, look at the ice times from that game for Pittsburgh defensemen, and you will see 5 blue liners, all with at least 21 minutes as they shared Ian Cole's workload amongst them after he left the game with that grotesque mouth injury. So he still appears to be in a bottom 4 situation with no great fantasy relevance until further notice.
Wow. Okay. Great job, Brian. Way to look into it and pour some cold water on the people who are getting excited about Olli Määttä. Yeah. Save the ad for someone else. Okay. One more guy on Pittsburgh, I guess I should mention. Looks like Patrick Hornqvist will be back in the lineup. He's been practicing. But the interesting thing to me is it looks like he won't be bumping Jake Gensel from the first power play, at least according to today's practice. Hornqvist was still on the second power play, Gensel on the first power play. So great news for Jake Gensel if he gets to hang on that first power play, even with Hornqvist in the lineup.
Yeah, did you notice, by the way, those Hornqvist for Bozak rumors that swirled really crazily, but from no legitimate source for like 8 hours before opening night? People were talking about it like it was a done deal.
Kind of like those rumors today that Shipachyov wants to go back to the KHL, then right away he tweeted or something saying like, that's not true.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. But like that, the Hornqvist thing, it didn't happen, which actually, just to focus on Hornqvist for a second longer, it's probably unfortunate for him. We talked about him at the end of last year as someone who might be able to benefit from a change of scenery. In the short term, if he can't work his way back into a meaningful scoring role with the Penguins, he remains fantasy irrelevant. Mostly, it's still even hard to say as a guy who had that scoring upside in Nashville, had it when he arrived in Pittsburgh as a 60-point player, and then like his role has changed.
Yeah, like I think it obviously depends on your league format. If he is going to help you in hits and shots on goal, like if those things count, then maybe he's worth owning. But yeah, he's definitely a lot less interesting for straight up points and power play points if he's on that second power play. Okay, Brian, before we move on to Shipachyov and that whole crazy situation in Vegas, let's talk about another popular thing people do in Vegas, which is bet on sports. And you can do that with our brand new sponsor, FanDuel. We're so excited to be sponsored by FanDuel. Fantasy hockey fans, the wait is over. Hockey is back, which means daily fantasy hockey on FanDuel. For those of you who don't know, it's like you get to play fantasy hockey. You get to basically pick your team, but every day you get to pick a different team. So if you're like frustrated, just like, oh, why did I draft Connor Sheary? Don't worry about it. Just don't take him the next day. Grab Brian Rust for a cheap value deal. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. You could play for as low as like $1. So you just, throw in a buck, have a good time. Maybe you could take in a lot more, get an increase. I joined a league last week. We actually have our Keeping Karlsson FanDuel League, which Brian's going to tell you about in a little bit, going every week. And last week I came so close to winning, Brian, but I went against my advice, which I've been giving all preseason, which is not to invest in goalies. But I spent a big chunk of my budget on Devin Dubnyk in the game against Calgary, and he lost. Should have spent less on Mike Smith.
You should have spent less on Mike Smith. You really went all in with your early season projections, sticking on that one game. He looked pretty good in his first game, not so much in his second. Anyway, you mentioned this listener league that we have. You should join it. It's like a fun, low-stakes way to play against Elon and I. You can play in our listener league. It runs each Thursday at 7 p.m., but that means your lineup can be set as of Wednesday around 8 p.m. Sometime Wednesday evening, the league will open, so just refresh a million times at fanduel.com/Karl. That's how you join us. Again, the league opens each Wednesday night around 8 p.m., and then you'll actually compete against us after you set your lineup beginning at 7 p.m. on Thursday. It's a lot of fun. Someone needs to take Elon down a peg.
Yeah, I mean, I did so well. I picked Ovechkin. I got his hat trick. I picked Krejci, got his really good game. But then the goaltending, because Jonathan Quick had a shutout that night. And so all the people who had Quick ended up leapfrogging me. But anyways, okay, let's continue on. So let's talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. By the way, do people catch that? KeepingKarlsson.com/Karl or FanDuel.com/Karl?
No, that's an edit point. We got to you said KeepingKarlsson.com/Karl.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but okay, so in case you guys didn't catch that, Jade, you got that? Cool. By the way, I want to thank, this is for like off the air, but like I want to thank Jade so much. Jade's taking down, for those of you in the chat room wondering why I'm like commenting in the chat room and telling Jade about errors, but like she's taking down the timestamps of when Brian and I flub things so that my editing will be easier. So she is a hero and I love her. Okay, let me get back into it now. So in case you didn't catch that, FanDuel.com/Karl. Get in there Wednesday after 8 p.m. and set your lineup for Thursday. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And
Brian,
that's Karl with a K.
Okay, yes. So, Brian, let's move on to Vegas now. So, lots of crazy stuff have happened this week for the Vegas Golden Knights. Let's try to get through it all. Vegas, they waived Calvin Pickard. The whole story there is actually Boston waived Malcolm Subban. So, Vegas took Subban. Then they waived Pickard. Then Toronto, Pickard cleared waivers, but then they ended up trading Pickard to the Leafs for a player and a pick or something. So whatever. The Leafs now have Calvin Pickard. Vegas's backup goalie is Malcolm Subban. So FYI, I'm sure Subban's going to get in some games at some point, though Fleury's done really well in the first two games. So, I don't expect Subban to be very relevant. But anyway, okay, this is the tip of the iceberg for Vegas roster talk this week because they, I guess, have too many unappealing players that they drafted and they couldn't trade them all. I'm talking about in the expansion draft. So they ended up having to start the season with both Vadim Shipachyov and Shea Theodore in the minors just so they wouldn't have to lose all these other guys for nothing, which is kind of crazy because those are the two guys who we thought might be fantasy relevant this year on the Golden Knights, and neither of them are playing. So this is a disaster for anyone who drafted these guys because you can't put them in IR spots. They're just hanging on your roster, wasting a spot. Brian, what should Shipachyov and Theodore owners do at this point? Do you drop them, or do you think they're worth holding on to until this all gets straightened out because their upside is so high? Any sense of how long all of this can take?
Yeah, so for the rumors that Vadim Shipachyov is going to the KHL, as we alluded to earlier, I will believe it when I see it. His agent, Peter Svoboda, the legendary Habs defenseman, one of my first favorite players ever for some reason, he's already denied the report. But even if Svoboda hadn't denied it, again, it's not something I'm about to buy so quickly. And as you sort of mentioned, Elon, what an embarrassing situation for Vegas all around. What a terrible start to a franchise. Imagine how hard it is to explain how hockey works to their fans to start with. Not to say anything about Vegas fans. I'm sure they're wonderful, but like the stories, I remember when they went into Nashville and Atlanta, there were all these fan education campaigns. This one just got a lot more difficult. You have your first line center and your top billed offensive defenseman toiling in minors on paper while the
Brian,
general
actually,
manager...
go again. Wait, Brian and Jade, edit point. Top build offensive defenseman. You said defensive defenseman.
Oh, okay.
So go from, you've got your first line center.
Okay. You've got your first line center and your top billed offensive defenseman toiling in the minors on paper while general manager George McPhee figures out how to rid himself of the guys he accumulated because of his apparent misread of what the trade market for them would be, which he probably should have seen coming when he was only able to flip Mark Mathot for as much as he got back. I think that was back in July, Elon. And one of the suitors for him was the Sens. They were just trying to trade like a third-round pick. Anyway, I guess you hold on to Shipachyov and Theodore in your league if their projected edit point. If their projected production would still put them a step ahead of the next best free agents, it's kind of tricky since both are essentially brand new commodities in brand new deployment on a brand new team. But you can take some short-term pain for some hopeful long-term gain while their agents, and Vegas management continue trying to work out the quiet things that no one ever knows.
Yeah, I guess I would just add that it kind of depends on your league and how tight it is and like how hard it's going to be to make the playoffs. Like, Brian, in the Cupful, there's only 6 out of 14 teams that make the playoffs, and the top 2 teams get a bye, which is so valuable to get that bye. And it might be like 1 or 2 standings points that makes the difference. So it is tough to hold on to 1 or 2 roster spots, being wasted. I don't know. It's a tough decision. I guess it also depends, like you said, like who's in free agency, how much of a downgrade are we talking if you drop these guys. But yeah, I wish I could help you. This really sucks. Okay. The crazy thing with all of this is that Vegas has still won their first 2 games. 2-1 versus Dallas, 2-1 versus Arizona in OT. 3 of their 4 goals have been scored by James Neal. Neal, the guy who had a disappointing 23 goals and 41 points in 70 games last year in Nashville. All of a sudden now he's got 3 goals in the first 2 games. Do you think he's going to comfortably best his numbers from last year? Can he do better than his 41 points in Nashville now that he's in Vegas? He's playing with Cody Eakin and Perron, though perhaps that all changes once, if/when Shipachyov arrives.
Of course he can. He's going to get much better deployment than he saw in Nashville as a declining shooter, and he's going to get back into a role where he's thrived for years, albeit as a younger, more capable shooter. So I don't know how high he can get. Again, 50 points seems to be a reasonable cap of your expectation for anyone playing for Vegas this year. But he is certainly emerging as the guy who might be the best own, as long as Shipachyov's in the minor. At least we had sort of had Marchessault tab for that role. But to his credit, James Neal is running away with it.
Yeah, I think if you have Marchessault at this point, you could probably drop him. I don't know. Tell me if that's premature, Brian. I don't really care much for him. I also saw Riley Smith was going to be projected to be the top line, top power play with Shipachyov. Obviously, that changed and his value goes out the window. Right now, it's looking like you just want James Neal and Marc-Andre Fleury, who has been better than I expected he would be for sure. If you go back to Schmork Goaliesborg, I said, don't worry about him. But no, like, maybe Vegas is going to be an okay defensive team. At least they seem to be in these first 2 games, though they have been against, well, Dallas is a team that normally scores a lot of goals, and then Arizona. So I don't know, like Fleury's looking really good. Maybe there's going to be a lot of saves for him to have. Like, am I just like reading too much into 2 games? Is Fleury the same guy he was going into the season as he is now, in your opinion, or have you gone higher on Fleury at this point?
I'm no higher. I'm Marc-Andre Fleury. Maybe that's not fair. I backed him a lot as a regular season goalie who was very capable and underappreciated for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but I just don't see things keeping up the way they are in Vegas. They've squeaked by a couple matchups. Fleury stopped how many shots, Elon? More than 40, and at least one of them, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I don't see that continuing all season long, especially in the absence of a capable backup who might be there in Malcolm Subban. But from what we've seen so far from Subban, it's not a capable backup situation.
Okay, and I guess I'll throw out one more player you could look at in Vegas. If your league counts blocks, maybe take a look at Jason Garrison. He's put up 6 in each of the first 2 games for the Golden Knights. He's getting 20 plus minutes of deployment, obviously better than what he was getting in Tampa Bay. And obviously they're letting in a lot of shots and he's blocking a lot of shots. So maybe that's something that will be a consistent source of blocks for you. Jason Garrison, throwing it out there.
Yeah, and I'll also throw out there in the meantime, while Shea Theodore is down in the minors, quote unquote, it looks like Colin Miller and Nate Schmidt are the power play quarterbacks, with Colin Miller being the one on what looks to be the better unit. It's hard to call it a number 1 power play unit, but it's probably the better one in Vegas.
Okay, so by the way, we were talking about surprising goalies in Marc-Andre Fleury. Brian, I'm going to give you a bunch of goalies who have surprised me in the first 2 games. Of course, all of this, like we said at the top of the show, right? It's been like a couple games. What can you really say? But these are some goalies that we had very low in Schmore Goaliesborg that have done very well. Let's start with Semyon Varlamov. Like, I'm so excited because I personally have been benefiting. No one drafted him in my couple division. Couple, by the way, is the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. It's been a lot of fun so far in the first 2 weeks. But anyways, we'll get to that later. But yeah, Varlamov wasn't drafted, and then we used the Fab free agent acquisition budget system, and I got him for $0. Just picked him up the next day, and he's been amazing. He made 37 saves in the 4-2 win over the Rangers to start the year. By the way, both of those goals against, both of those 2 goals were shorthanded, so he didn't let in any even strength goals. Then today, he had a 29 save shutout versus Boston. So that's no even strength goals against. And like, he's doing great. Is the old Varlamov back? Remember back when Varlamov used to be really good and we thought maybe the team's not that great, but he's still a really good goalie. Is it time, or maybe should I also lower my expectations because it's been 2 games? Anyways, I'm really happy to have him. I feel like if he's available in free agency right now, people should jump on him, right? Right?
We've seen elite from Varlamov before, but we've also seen injured, inconsistent, and downright awful from Varlamov before. So, hey, it's hard for me to get super pumped about him, especially. But I guess Colorado's looking okay early on. So if there's a goalie scarcity issue in your league, or you have an early injury, I don't think anyone's out except Ben Bishop, although I think he's expected to be back pretty soon. I guess you can grab him if you want an extra insurance policy, or you want to deprive the rest of your league of him as an option if you want to be sneakier about it. Colorado, again, a lot of people are getting excited about what they're seeing. They've begun the season by marginally improving in their ranking in the league in shot attempts per 60 minutes, though that's more of a function of other teams struggling out of the gate than the Avalanche making any certain improvement that we know is on purpose. But the Avalanche do appear to be struggling slightly less out of the gate than about 10 other teams. So I guess that's good for them. That would hypothetically make Varlamov's job a little easier, but I'm still not counting on them offering him any real any real protection. He's going to have to be elite all season long if his save percentage is going to survive, at least until the average hockey fan can name more than 2 members of the Colorado D-Corps.
Oh, so you're saying, okay, so Barry and Eric Johnson, and then, you're right, that is tough. Zadorov, I know, was there. I think I can name 3. But, okay, I get your point. But still, good start.
Well, for the trivia, for anyone listening, you can answer it now. You've got Chris Bigras, Anton Lindholm, Andrei Mironov, Patrick Nemeth, but great job on Nikita edit point. But great job on Nikita Zadorov. Way to go.
Okay,
Smarter than the average hockey fan.
There you go. Okay, but Varlamov's still very exciting. And yeah, it is interesting. Maybe one of the biggest storylines of the year so far, that Colorado doesn't stink. Like, they just beat Boston, who does stink, by the way. Maybe Tuukka Rask stinks. Brian, Varlamov versus Tuukka Rask might become a question people have to ask him. But okay, let me continue with the goalies that are impressing me, and then we'll get to the goalies who I'm very nervous about. So another guy, Jimmy Howard. We had him in the tier with Varlamov and Marc-Andre Fleury of starting goalies on bad teams going into the year. But Varlamov, he helped lead the Red Wings to 2 wins to start the year, 4-2 over Minnesota, then 2-1 over Ottawa in the shootout. He has a .961 save percentage in these 2 games, so he's been great. Then we have Jacob Markstrom, who's only played 1 game, but he stopped 35 shots in a 3-2 win over the Oilers on Saturday for the Canucks. So yeah, Varlamov, Howard, and Markstrom, 3 goalies who I saw in free agency in a lot of leagues, all starting the year strong. I don't know. Do you have any general takes about those 2 guys, Howard and Markstrom?
Well, with Howard, we're getting a bit of deja goaltend with this early season magic that we're seeing from him. He had a .961 through his first 7 starts last year, and then proceeded to be .913 through his next several appearances, the rest of the season, essentially, some of which were brilliant, others which were awful, and that's both before and after he missed time due to injury. What Howard's play means is that it's bad news early on for anyone counting on Peter Mrazek to have a wide open door to return to the starter's crease. But of course, I'm not ruling it out as something that can still happen later on. As for Jacob Markstrom, another case of some early season magic that we saw last year in Vancouver. When they won their first 4 games, they only gave up 6 goals across those 4 victories to start the 2016-17 season. Then the Canucks proceeded to be the Canucks, dropping 9 straight, averaging 3.5 goals against through that span in a very yucky Canucky kind of way. So I think what you're asking me, Elon, really is whether I believe any more in Vancouver or Markstrom or the Red Wings or Jimmy Howard more than I did 1 week ago at this time, just because of how they've played recently. My answer is no, I do not, but I'm keeping an open mind more so with Howard than with Markstrom.
Of course, yeah. Classic Brian answer. 2 games are not going to sway you, but definitely, I like what you said before. You snuck that in. There's a strategy in fantasy hockey that you could just pick up these goalies just so no one else can, and then you could have dibs, and maybe for a week or 2 you have more goalies than you were planning to have. But at that point, if they still do well, maybe you could trade one, get a nice little profit for him. And if not, then you drop him and whatever. You had an extra goalie for a week. So something to consider if your free agency list basically has Howard, Markstrom, and then a bunch of backups. Maybe you do want to just grab Howard and Markstrom and don't let anyone else do it. Okay, Brian, let's go to the other side of the coin here. Some goalies who have been brutally bad. And then maybe as we go through them, you could talk about whether maybe, I don't know, if Varlamov is available, if you would swap one of these guys for him. Let's start with Steve Mason, a guy who you used to like, but I think you've told me you're done with Steve Mason now, right? He got pulled in his first game versus Toronto after letting in 5 goals on 20 shots. He then stayed in for all 6 goals against versus Calgary on Saturday in the 6-3 loss. Hellebuck will be playing today against the Oilers. Who knows if he'll be able to do well. Maybe he'll be able to steal the job, but Mason has not been good in his first 2 games with Winnipeg. Like, is there any reason for Mason owners to hold on?
After years of pumping Steve Mason's tires, sick transit Gloria, glory fades. It's been too long since he's been as good as I've always talked him up to be. He's at the point, he's at the point where he needs to show me what he can do instead of me having to refer to numbers that are further and further behind us in the rear view mirror. I need to see something from him before I get excited about him again. Of the goalies you're about to ask me about, Elon, I'm going to spoil it right here. He is the one I would drop for Semyon Varlamov, albeit reluctantly, because I still think the Jets are going to be good. I think there's some coaching issues that certainly need to be worked out. Something is still very broken in Winnipeg for their goalies, and I'm not convinced it's actually the goalies. That said, Steve Mason cannot get the benefit of the doubt until he gives us a good run again.
Okay, so how about now let's talk about Tuukka Rask. I'll actually tell you 3 of them, Brian, then maybe you could comment on all of them. So Tuukka Rask, 2 bad starts so far, 3 goals against on 29 shots in the 4-3 win over Nashville to start the year, then 3 goals against today in the 4-0 loss to Colorado. So Rask was inconsistent last year, and like just overall, I'm not too excited about him. Like, it just doesn't seem like he's really that good anymore. Then we have Martin Jones, led in 4 goals in the opening 5-3 loss to Philly, and then got pulled after 4 goals against versus LA in their 4-1 loss. And Aaron Dell, by the way, came in and was perfect in relief. I have a feeling he'll be getting some starts soon. So Martin Jones, put him on the pile with Tuukka Rask as 2 goalies who were drafted probably decently high as starting goalies that might not be good. And I'll give you one more, Brian. Henrik Lundqvist, though he's like, I guess, being typical Henrik Lundqvist because he stunk for a couple of games, and then, of course, he got a shutout yesterday. So he's just up and down. I guess no surprise from Henrik Lundqvist.
No surprise. We saw that up and down all season long last year. Going back to the guys you mentioned already, Elon, Tuukka Rask, we know this is how things go for Tuukka Rask. They went really well to start last year, then they went poorly, and then was up and down to the point that it was essentially average the rest of the way. So he's a guy who can really help you some weeks, blow up your stats others, similar to Lundqvist that way. And then as for Martin Jones, you've got to look out for Aaron Dell. If you own Martin Jones at a point, you've got to look out for Aaron Dell. If you own Jones and are counting on him for starts, I sure hope you have a plan B and or plan C in place. I called it before the season. I don't want to be right, although I kind of want to be right. Of course I want to be right. That's a silly thing to say, although I wish Martin Jones the best.
Oh my God,
in the 2017-18 season.
Why?
Aaron Dell is my pick for the most likely guy to replace his starter by the end of the season.
Brian watches hockey games and cheers for both teams to win. It seems like.
No, I'm at our party next week. I'm cheering against both. How about that? I cheer for the person, though.
I don't believe you. You're going to
Sort
be
of.
happy for whoever scores. By the
Some
way,
of them
that's
aren't, some of them aren't great. Keepingkarlsson.com/party, by the way, this Saturday in Toronto. Be there, but also
yeah.
RSVP.
Yeah, check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. We hope to meet you. You get to meet us, and we get to meet you. I'd love to meet our listeners after all this time. Okay, right. So we're talking about goalies. Like, okay, so this is not a bad goalie. I'm about to say. I'm bracing myself. I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, but I'm just going to say it. I'm not saying he's bad, but I just wonder if we maybe oversold him a little bit in Smorgasborg by putting him in the top tier. Carey Price. Is he really like a top tier goalie at this point? Like, yeah, he did well versus Buffalo, and he did okay against. Well, no, then he kind of got shelled. No, he did okay versus. Sorry, I'll say it again. Edit point. He did well versus Buffalo and the Rangers, but he got shelled by Ovechkin, right? And the thing is, the Habs seem to not be like a good team. Like, the thing is, like, Price is fine, and he's going to keep doing well. And I'm sure he'll be an above 920 goalie for the most part this season, but like the Habs aren't very good, and I don't know if he can help them win enough games to make him a tier 1 goalie. Like, their defense, it seems like it hurt them to lose Markov. Like, who do they have back there? You talked about how on Colorado it's hard to name the defenseman. You know, it's not that much better in Montreal, it seems. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm just getting the sense that I would rather have maybe one of our tier 2 guys from Smorgasborg than Carey Price, like maybe a Crawford or a Talbot or a Frederick Anderson. Like, all these teams I think will win more games. I don't know if it's worth it to get Price over those guys. I wonder. But then the question becomes, if you agree with me, like, do you sell high now if you have Carey Price? Because, you know, there's still people who think of him as like an elite tier 1 goalie, and maybe now's your last chance to get like a really good return from him? Or am I wrong? And like, maybe should non-Price owners be going after him right now because for some reason I'm dumb and he's actually really great and you should try to get him if you can?
Before you softened your take about maybe he's just like the difference between him and Crawford in the next tier doesn't justify the difference, before you softened your take with that, I was about to tell you that this is a very early candidate for your worst take of the season. It could still be up there. I might still being a little kind to you. Buy low on Carey Price. If Elon owns Carey Price and is in your league, buy low. Like, if you think you can downgrade Carey Price to Devin Dubnyk or Corey Crawford or one of those other guys, and in the process you get a more significant upgrade at forward or defense, and your goalie categories are like in the cupful, they're 2 out of 7, or if they're 3 out of 8, whatever. Sure, the difference between Carey Price at the end of the day and that pack of goalies might not be as significant as the difference between the skaters that you can involve in that kind of swap. But Elon, Carey Price is a tier 1 elite goalie. I'm not worried. We've talked a lot about how it doesn't really matter how good Montreal is, because Carey Price is going to win 30 games by himself, and the Canadiens can help him win a few more by their virtues. Remember, early season, lots of new faces on the Montreal blue line this year, not to mention the sort of new one behind the bench. It's crazy to make the leap from Carey Price being elite to being non-elite at this point, and I certainly shouldn't need to tell you that. You're a host of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey podcast. You know this.
Okay, first of all, I'm not talking about him as a goalie. I still think he's an elite goalie. I'm talking about a fantasy goalie. I think he might be more of tier 2, because I think one of our criteria for tier 1 is a goalie on like a really good team that's going to get a lot of wins. I don't know if I believe you that he can help Montreal get all of those wins that he needs to for tier 1. I'm not like saying he sucks. I'm not saying to drop Carey Price. I'm saying that I think he belongs in tier 2. Okay, I'm not like going. I think it's a little harsh for you to say. It's like a horrible take for me to say he's maybe tier 2 and not tier 1.
The sum of what Carey Price can do and what his team can do, I think still resembles what Braden Holtby and his team and what Matt Murray and his team can do. I think Carey Price is the best goalie in the league, so he can play a little better than them, even if his team plays worse than their teams do. Although I agree with you, Montreal is not, like, there's a gap between Montreal, Pittsburgh, and Washington, but Montreal's got a pretty nice division, and Carey Price barely needs a team in front of him to win games some nights.
I mean, all right. Bobrovsky had a better save percentage than him last year, but okay, let's move. Oh, fine. Speaking of disappointing people on Montreal, not that Carey Price has been disappointing. I'm sorry. Carey Price is amazing. Okay, but this guy has been disappointing. Maybe it's not his fault, but a lot of people have been asking us for permission to drop Alex Galchenyuk at this point on our patron-only Facebook group. He has no points. on 6 shots on goal in 3 games so far, playing with Dano and Shaw on, I think, line 3 in terms of ice time. So bad deployment, no production. Seems like the coach doesn't want to put him into a situation to succeed. I've been actually telling people that I think they should drop Galchenyuk for guys like Nemesnikov, who we'll get to, or like, these free agents, maybe like a Verana, people who are on their top line and producing there. Do you concur that these Galchenyuk owners can let go, or do you still think he could reach that potential and the hype that we had for him? Like, I remember last year, we really liked him.
Yeah, we really liked him for many years, but at this point, especially if there's somebody appealing to you in free agency, I think you can stream him out. Of course, he has that deployment upside, but we've been saying that for 3 years, and he has not gotten the deployment for long enough stretches to be worth holding on to when he's not in the best position to score. The payoff on Galchenyuk, he's still really talented, and the payoff is going to be good if and when we ever get to that payoff, but I'm not that into waiting anymore. If you draft him, you've put yourself in kind of an awkward position where you have this guy who has huge potential, but few opportunities to realize it. So you have to decide yourself whether you're going to wait that out or not. My solution to this problem, if you have Galchenyuk on your roster, is to just not draft him. It's almost like a Duchesne situation from last year, Elon, and Duchesne from this year.
What was you said? Your solution, if you have Galchenyuk on your roster, is not to draft him. What does that mean?
No, that's what it would have been. Like, you made a mistake by drafting him. This is how I avoid this situation or being in this. Duchesne is an excellent comparison, both last year and this year. You're drafting a guy based on his incredible talent, but a history of not getting a chance to show it off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it seems like you made a mistake by drafting Galchenyuk. Probably people listening that have him on their roster don't need to be berated by you, Brian, for their horrible mistake. They need to know if they should drop him. I think if you have really good options that are producing, I think you can. Also, if a guy like Nemesnikov, I'm just throwing him out there, we'll name a bunch more guys like that. If someone like that is still available in free agency, that probably means that people aren't going to be jumping on, a slumping Galchenyuk if they didn't jump on a surging Nemesnikov.
Hey, man, you reap what you sow.
Okay, you suck. Actually, any listener who has Galchenyuk, you suck at fantasy hockey.
No, that's not. But no, just joking. But you need your bed, so lie in it.
All right, so another guy,
and I really hope that Galchenyuk gets better for your team.
Yes, of course. Well, here's someone, Brian, now that makes me think that I might suck at fantasy hockey because I have this guy on a couple of my teams and he's also done nothing. Kyle Okposo on Buffalo, no points yet in 3 games, 6 shots on goal. That's not very much, 2 shots a game. He was bumped to the 3rd line today with Reinhart and Pouliot, so not even playing with O'Reilly anymore in the 6-2 loss to New Jersey. I guess they lost 6-2, so maybe that means they're going to shake it up again. And Okposo was still on the top power play, so there is some silver lining, but it's only 3 games. But we were actually chatting over text, and you mentioned to me that you think that Okposo might actually not be as good as we thought going into the season. This is another guy that maybe we need to alter our projection. Curious to know what you think. Like, how long would you wait before acting on this suspicion that we might have been wrong about Kyle Okposo?
This is a really hard one because he's a guy I've drafted so many times in the last few years as an under-the-radar pick with huge upside. But with the way the season has started, I find myself asking, okay, well, when's the last time Okposo's production has impressed me? And so I looked back a couple years ago in 2015-16, his last year with the Islanders. He had 64 points in 79 games. Very impressive. And then in his debut as a Sabre last year, he started strong with 7 points in 7 games played, but then he did nothing for the next 42 games. He had just 24 points in that span and was an absolute waste of a roster spot. He did come on late with 14 points in his last 16 games of the season, but even that puts him up, to 38 games. Edit point. That puts him up to 38 points over 58 games after the first 7 games of the year. Anyway, I'm getting into a lot of numbers here. What I'm saying is that the entire body of work has been wanting, even though he's had a couple strong runs. I'm not loving Okposo's inconsistency. I still wish him to be a solid scorer with 60-point upside, but the opportunity in edit point. But the opportunity in Buffalo certainly just isn't there right now for him with the most recent line combinations. And remember also that Okposo was a splashy acquisition by what's now the previous management regime in Buffalo. It was Edit point. Sorry, got to get used to this. It was Tim Murray and Dan
Wait,
Biles.
gotta get used to what? To podcasting?
To saying edit point. Oh, good one. All right. It was Tim Murray and Dan Bilesma who were around when he came to the Sabres, and Okposo has no connection to the current GM and coach Phil Housley. They have no loyalty to him. As you can hear, I'm pretty down about Okposo, so just watch him. I guess he's someone who's on my roster who I'm sort of treating like a Galchenyuk, someone I feel like maybe, just maybe, I can drop him, and if I'm quick enough to re-add him again, I can reap the benefits when he does end up in a good position. But for now, I think I'm still going to hang on for another week.
Yeah, well, Brian, we both have him in our joint league, and we were chatting today. We didn't pull the trigger yet, and we still can. We have him on our roster. And Paul Stastny, top line, top power play, Paul Stastny is just sitting there in free agency, doing pretty well. We'd also have to drop Shipachyov, though, because we have him in an IR plus spot, and he's no longer eligible for that. So that's a decision I'm mulling over if we just drop Shipachyov and Okposo to get Paul Stastny. That's the kind of decision I guess a lot of people might be making right now. Maybe you could give Okposo, he has still 3 more games this week. Maybe give him those 3 games, see if he could get back in the top 6. If not, I have no room for bottom 6 people on my fantasy rosters, even if they're on the top power play. Like, I don't want Sam Gagner on my fantasy team, okay? All right, but anyways, on the other side in Buffalo, how about that? Evander Kane, he had an assist and 11 shots versus Montreal, then 2 goals and assists and 8 shots on goal in the 6-3 loss to the Islanders. And then even though Buffalo kind of stinks and they lost again today 6-2, he scored both of those goals and he had 7 shots. So if you count it all up, that's 4 goals, 2 assists, and 26 shots on goal in 3 games. For Evander Kane, 26 shots on goal. He's playing with Eichel and Pominville at even strength, so a great line to be on. He's getting second unit power play time, so he is getting some power play time. He's obviously not the kind of guy that's going to help you a lot on the power play, but if he can stay healthy, and I know that's a big if, is he the odds-on favorite to lead the league in shots this year? Like even higher than Ovechkin? Or at least can he compete with him? It seems like he could. He takes so many shots. I also feel like if he could stay healthy all year, he should be a legit shot to score 40 goals, right? Oh, and if that's not enough, he even had 6 hits today. So he's helping you all over the place.
Yeah, he had not really registered much in the hits category, Elon, if I'm remembering correctly from his first showings. But Evander Kane is definitely the number 1, is looking real good this year guy on Twitter these days. Lots of tweets every time he plays. Oh, he's flying out there. He's looking better than ever. Watch Evander Kane. And it's all very exciting because these are things we've wanted to say about him for so long. It's been a while since we've been able to, and he can certainly do both of those things that you mentioned, Elon. He can lead the league in shots, and if he does, he's got a shot at 40 goals, even though he's historically been a low percentage shooter, so it might not be as automatic as it would be for anyone else who matches his shot totals. But we know better with Evander Kane than to get ahead of ourselves with him. So if you own him, pat yourself on the back, enjoy it now. Hopefully it lasts. If he's a free agent, snatch him up as soon as you can. If he's on someone else's team, try to make an offer, but don't offer the world. See if you can find an owner who is worried about his injury risk or inconsistency and is willing to sell high, but not that high.
Brian, okay, sorry. This is going to be my third respectful disagreement here. You're not going to get Evander Kane for a fair deal right now. He's like tearing it up. Don't like try to trade for a guy that has 26 shots in 3 games and has like 6 points in 3 games right now. That seems like silly advice. If anything, I would have thought you'd say if you have him, sell high, if anything, if you don't think he's going to be able to keep it up and if you're worried about his injury risk. But anyway.
It'd be very hard to sell high on him right now because he could be healthy. It's like if Letang does this well, I guess you'd also try and sell high. So try and sell high if you own him, I guess. I don't know.
I think hold him. I think he's good. I don't know.
That's what I said hold him. And now you're telling me sell high. So I said, okay, I could see that. And you go back to, you're just a contrarian.
I guess so. Well, I was more responding to when you said to go after him if someone else owns him. But yeah, I guess you see what you can get for him. But it's very, very exciting. Hopefully he won't get injured on the next podcast. Hopefully we haven't jinxed him. Okay, we're still talking about some disappointing players. How about a guy who's very disappointing because he hasn't even played yet is Brock Besser, who a lot of people drafted thinking he could be a Rookie of the Year candidate this year. And he was surprisingly scratched for the Canucks' first game on Saturday versus Edmonton. A lot of people drafted him, had high hopes. Like I said, he put up 5 points and 25 shots in 9 games at the end of last season. I asked on our Facebook group How long would you hold him? Like if you drafted him, any sense of whether he'll get into the lineup soon and where he'll slot in? And thankfully, our prospect expert Cameron Robinson responded and said, so Brian, I'll just quote it. You can just take this one off. He said, I think we'll see him in the lineup soon, perhaps not next game, as the team played well against the Oilers. When he does get in, it'll either be next to Horvat or on line 3 with Gagne and Burmistrov. I think people need to be ready to see him bounce in and out, and likely even a minute or two in Utica. Virtanen has really earned his spot, and there's really only one spot on that right wing that's available, with Dorsett owning the 4th right wing slot. So that doesn't sound very good. Thank you, Cam. And that doesn't sound very good if you're a Brock Besser owner in a 1-year league. Seems to me like you could drop him. I also saw on Roto World suggesting that both Besser and Virtanen's games would be limited to like 50, 60 games because they're like not used to playing full seasons because they came from the NCAA.
You told me I could take this one off, so.
Okay, all right, let's just move on then. Let's talk now about some players who have had great results with unexpected deployment. I want to start with Vladislav Nemesnikov, who I brought up before. He won the lottery in Tampa Bay as he's been playing on line 1 and power play 1 with Kucherov and Stamkos. 3 points, 2 on the power play to show for it in the first 2 games, 6 shots on goal. We thought Braden Point would get that spot, but he's instead been doing just fine with Palat and Yenny Gourde on line 2, as Point has a goal and 2 assists, or he had a goal and 2 assists in game 1 versus Florida, and then a goal and an assist in the second game, 2 shots on goal in each game. So actually also Tampa's playing tonight, I believe, so you could go check yourself, exercise for the listener if you want to get an updated account of how Nemesnikov and Braden Point are doing. But Brian, who would you rather have? I think this is always an interesting fantasy question. You have Braden Point, who I seem to get the impression is like really good and is maybe showing that he could even drive his own offense, but he's not in as good a situation. Or you have Nemesnikov, who is on this great line and on the top power play. Who would you want between the two? And are both of them guys that people should be rushing to grab off of free agency if they're available?
Yeah, I think you could make a reasonable... I'll start that over at a point. You could definitely add either one of these guys right away if they're available. They'd probably be better than your deepest forward in most pools that aren't so shallow. The thing with Nemesnikov being on that top line is I can see that spot rotating as it did last year. If you remember, Elon, every time Nemesnikov was just getting settled there, in came someone else to what had been his spot, and he got bumped elsewhere in the lineup. Braden Point, in my mind, is still a candidate to get time there, as is Alex Killorn, and heck, even Ryan Callahan, who's been there at weird times before. Maybe Andre Palat, Chris Kunitz. There are a lot of pieces in Tampa that we've seen shifted before, so I'm sort of expecting that to happen again. In the meantime, absolutely ride Nemesnikov, and it's really great that Braden Point is still getting points away from that top line. I'm not sure how much a long-term sacrifice, though, I'd make to get Nemesnikov, just because there's no plan B. If he doesn't end up on that top line, it's unlikely he's going to be, maybe unlikely is harsh, but you can't count on this sort of production. So if you're dropping somebody who's a step above the rest of your free agents to get Nemesnikov, you just might find yourself in trouble at some point when you might want to replace him if his deployment does change. So between Braden Point and Nemesnikov, if I'm picking one just for today, I'll go Nemesnikov, but I have a little more faith in Braden Point being able to produce from anywhere on the depth chart that I do expect to shift. But we'll see. John Cooper has fooled me before.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line is both are really good options. I think I would go Nemesnikov. I'm just a sucker for a top line, top power play guy, but I do think Braden Point is the better player. So it is tough. I think you can't go wrong either way, hopefully. Okay, so another player that did well that no one was expecting is Will Butcher in New Jersey, and actually another guy who we'll bring up in this segment is Jesper Bratt. So there's a lot of people on New Jersey that, Brian, I'm going to admit I didn't really know much about a week ago, and now we've got to talk about them. So let's start with Will Butcher, who was recently signed out of the NCAA, and it looked like in their first game versus Colorado, he stepped in as the top power play defenseman, and he had 3 power play assists versus Colorado. That led him to go for $26 in my Cupful division yesterday. And I wonder if the person who picked him is disappointed because Will Butcher played again today and it didn't go as well. No points, no shots on goal. He still got some power play time. David Severson also got power play time. It's hard to say like who's the top power play defenseman. It looks like today they were going evenly for 2 units. So we'll have to see. But, regardless, Will Butcher definitely had an amazing start and is going to get power play deployment on a New Jersey team that seems like they're capable of scoring goals, right? Like they scored a few goals versus Colorado, and then they had 6 goals today against Buffalo. These aren't the best competitions, but still, or sorry, these aren't the best competitors. Edit point. Sorry, Jade. Okay. These aren't the best competitors, but still, it's nice to see New Jersey scoring some goals. Maybe the top power play defenseman on the team, and maybe that is Will Butcher. Maybe that person is fantasy relevant and someone that you should add. Though, on the other hand, no shots. You know, he's not really helping in hits and blocks. You're not getting anything out of Will Butcher unless he's getting points for you. So is he someone you're rushing to grab in any of your leagues?
So first off, who is Will Butcher? A short introduction. He's a college free agent out of the University of Denver, where he hadn't been far off of a point per game pace in his last 2 seasons there. Signed this past summer with New Jersey after being pursued by several teams, and his deployment so far in New Jersey, getting that power play time, is probably one of the main reasons why he decided to go there. There aren't many places in the league that Butcher could just jump in as he's gotten to with New Jersey. As for what he's accomplished so far, Elon, you did a good job of summarizing it. I'm going to repeat 3 power play assists against Colorado, though, and nothing against Buffalo today. 6 goals, by the way, for New Jersey. I'll comment on that for a moment, getting off of Will Butcher. Buffalo looked terrible today on defense. Ristolainen and Beaulieu looked lost out there, and Chad Johnson was the last line of defense, and that didn't work out so well, although his coach didn't blame him in the quotes, edit point. Although his coach didn't blame him in the quotes that I was reading afterwards. Anyway, those 3 points that Butcher scored, that was still the first 3-point game registered by a Devils defenseman since Adam Larson managed the same feat against Vancouver 2.5 years ago, back in the 2014-15 season. Butcher played 15 minutes, 46 seconds today. That's 3 more minutes than he played in his first game. Elon, did you ask me if he's worth more than Severson right now?
Well, why don't we just discuss it? So I asked you if you would jump and grab Will Butcher, but I guess, yeah, you might as well tie them together. Maybe because a lot of people were excited about Severson going to the season. They assumed he would be the top power play defenseman. Now it looks like a bit of a competition. Do you want either of them on your team?
Kind of. If I'm desperate, I'll take one of them, and I will say Will Butcher could be worth more than Severson right now just because of upside, but that says about as much about Butcher's value as it does about Severson's, to be honest, which is pretty low.
Yeah, to me, it's like the low ice time and the no shots and the no blocks make him not so interesting to me, even if he's going to get a power play point every couple games or so. Okay, though, like I said, there's other people on New Jersey that we have to talk about. So another person who was having a great game versus Colorado was Kyle Palmieri. He had 2 power play assists before he got taken out in a knee-on-knee collision with Eric Johnson. But this led to some guy named Jesper Bratt, who was a big brat. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I just want to throw that in. That didn't make any sense. He took his spot. He took Palmieri's spot on the top line with Hall and Zaka, and he also got on the power play, and he delivered. He had a power play goal and a power play assist. And then today, Jesper Bratt stayed in that spot, and he had another 2 goals and an assist. So, like, who's this guy? And is he someone that people need to rush to add, at least while Palmieri is out? I assume once Palmieri is back, and apparently it's not serious, he's traveling with the team, I assume Jesper Bratt goes back down to, I don't know, wherever he was before in the bottom 6. Brian, I honestly don't even know who this guy is.
Yeah, a lot of us don't. All we know right now is that Jesper Bratt is another devil on this pod raging besides Z for Pavel Zacha, of course. But who is Jesper Bratt specifically? 6th round pick, 162nd overall in 2016. He played for 2 years in the Swedish Elite League, but not a top 6 contributor for Allmänna Idrottsklubben Ishockeyförening, better known as pronounced as AIK. I can't say I know much about Bratt. I'm not going to lie. I've read only the general prospect speak about him being a player who can be quick and creative but needs more development. The good news for Bratt is that there really aren't a whole lot of people to compete with to get top 6 minutes in New Jersey at the moment. And Bratt sure is making the most of his time there, staking a claim for when Palmieri, Stafford, and Zajac all return. Steve Laidlaw, Dauber Hockey, former guest of the show, he said he drafted Bratt late this year with Victor Arvidsson in mind, not saying that he thinks Bratt can be as good as Arvidsson, but he could find similar opportunity and take some advantage of it, and that's what he's done so far.
Yeah, so again, we don't really know what his upside can be just because once Palmieri is back, we assume Bratt goes off the top power play and off that line. But I mean, he's definitely making a name for himself. I don't think, though, that this is like bad news for Palmieri. Like, he was doing really well. I'm sure he'll be fine. But yeah, if Palmieri, if news comes out after this and he's going to be out for another week, I think you might want to jump on Bratt at least for the short term. Okay, one more guy in New Jersey I should mention, Brian. Let's point out New Jersey's now 2-0. And though the games were against Colorado and Buffalo, like we said, Schneider has been very good So perhaps he's another person we maybe underestimated in Smorgasbord, or maybe we should wait and maybe we'll see a more realistic version of Corey Schneider when New Jersey plays Toronto on Wednesday.
This is going to be an edit point. I'm just calling it now. I'm trying to load some numbers that haven't shown up yet. So just a moment, please.
Okay. Don't get mad at me when we're not done at 9:30.
Whoa. Whoa.
Was that bad?
I just don't know where it came from. Why would I be mad at you?
Well, I don't know. I'm just watching the clock. I know we discussed that we wanted to end by 9:30.
Everything's so good.
I know. I feel great. I'm a little nervous though. We've put a lot of pressure on Jade here. It's like if she misses one, then the show is gonna have you saying edit point in the show. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, maybe you can listen in like 3 times speed. Just one. Anyway, we'll see how it goes.
We might have to tinker with this process. But Jade, like, thank you so much. Sorry for all the pressure, but like you're doing a great job. I assume, actually, I don't know because I haven't seen your notes yet of your times. I hope you're doing great.
Well, we do have the bell coming soon.
Oh yeah, we have another idea for another time that we'll try out. Maybe I'll ring a bell and then I'll be able to see it in the waveform. Okay, Brian, are you ready to talk about Schneider? I said like he's looking really good, or maybe we should wait and see what he can do on Wednesday against Toronto.
So New Jersey was my dark horse, if you'll remember, before the season started, as a team that everyone projected to be terrible, but somehow could find a way to win some games. That's what they've done so far. I'm definitely not ready to call this a win, though. You look at their defense, it's super thin. We just talked about the absence of a power play quarterback. Now they're dealing with some injuries. It's going to be a slog, but if Schneider can perform up to what we've seen him, up to his best, which might be a bit of an ask, but say up to 90% of his previous best. Obviously, the Devils are already way further ahead than they were last year. Another Devil who I'd like to recognize today with 3 points, edit point, with 3 points today, 2 goals and 1 assist, Marcus Johansson. That's what he's asked to be called in New Jersey. We have to remember that. We've got to do Marcus Johansson right. No longer Johansson.
Okay, fair. And yeah, he had a good game. And we'll see. Obviously, he's going to do pretty well. He's on top line, top power play, or maybe second line, top 6, top power play for Marcus Johansson. Yeah,
the downside to Johansson is he has 2 goals on 2 shots this season. He had no shots on goal in the first game, which was a 4-1 win over Colorado. And then he had only 2 shots. Luckily, he scored on both of them today against Buffalo.
Man, Brian, I think I blew it in the couple this morning. I'm just following the scores now, and apparently Panic has scored. And I got Hartman. I could have had Panic. My opponent got Panic. I picked the wrong guy. Hartman's doing nothing today. I think you got to change your whole list. Ryan Hartman playing with Patrick Kane. No, I'm just kidding. This is me being extra reactionary and watching box scores. I'm sure a lot of our listeners do this. But okay, let's move on to another name of a player in a spot that I totally didn't expect him to be. Another guy who I will admit I didn't know like very much about at all going into the season. Did you know that Devin Shore has been on the top power play in Dallas instead of Jason Spezza? And he's done well. He actually has 2 power play assists to show for it, 1 in each of their 2 games. So I guess the same as my question I asked about Jesper Bratt. Who is Devin Shore? Is he going to hold this spot on the top power play, playing with Ben Sagan and like Klingberg and Radulov? Like, that's an amazing power play spot that we assumed would be Spezza, and that's why a lot of people drafted Spezza, assuming he could still get like 55, 60 points, even though he's not on the top line. I feel like if I was a Spezza owner, I'd be super worried, just as worried as like the Okposo owners and the Shiri owners should be. So yeah, should people be jumping to grab Devin Shore, and should people be rushing to drop Jason Spezza?
Devin Shore, the latest in a long line of Shores who have been mentioned before on this podcast. We've talked about Nick, we've talked about Drew, and Devin has about the same cachet with his name. He's a 23-year-old, 6'1", 205-pound late second round pick from back in 2012, though. That was the draft that he was taken in, which is why he's 23 now. He was above a point per game in his first AHL season, which actually only consisted of 23 games. And then he followed that up with 33 points in 82 games as an NHL rookie just last season with Dallas. He had never been a big shooter, though, which is one thing that concerns me. Last year, he was last amongst All-Stars regular forwards in shot attempts per 60 minutes. He has seen so far about 90 seconds more of ice time in the games he's played compared to last. And that's all about I have to edit point. And that's about all I have to say for now about him. We'll see if he stays there. I know I'd prefer to have Spezza in on that top power play unit, but it looks like Shore will at least get a squirt in the role he's in now.
Ugh. Okay, yeah. Well, Jason Spezza, I would be very nervous about if I owned him. He's in the Okposo category for me, except not even, because Okposo is at least on the top power play, and Spezza's not. He has an assist, though, so far this season. Jason Spezza, Okposo has nothing, so maybe they're about similar. Okay, by the way, on Dallas, Tyler Seguin has 19 shots in 2 games. He was tied with Evander Kane going into today, so we'll see if he can keep pace. Maybe he, Evander Kane, and Ovechkin will be the 3 vying for the top shots lead until like one of them gets injured, and then the other 2, it becomes easier. Okay, Brian, you know who's actually third in shots, or who was third in shots on goal going into today's game behind Evander Kane and Tyler Seguin, who were tied? And I guess you do, because you prepped for the show and you saw what I wrote.
Yeah, Pavel Buchnevich. No, you say it. You say Pavel Buchnevich.
No, it's not him. You even read it. Pavel Buchnevich doesn't take a lot of shots. No, it's Mika Zibanejad.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Zibanejad had 15 shots so far in 3 games, to be fair, but still, that's very good. 15 shots in 3 games. 4 of his 15 shots have gone in, 3 of them on the power play. So Zibanejad's clearly enjoying being the top line, top power play center on the Rangers, and having Shattenkirk there certainly hasn't hurt. Like I said, Zibanejad has 3 power play points in 3 games. This is a great spot for him. It seems like there's like no competition. He's just going to be there all season long, maybe playing with Pavel Buchnevich and Chris Kreider, or maybe Zuccarello will take that spot. But yeah, like you said, or like I guess we're about to say, Buchnevich has been playing on line 1 with Zibanejad and Kreider, and on power play 1 with those guys and Zuccarello and Shattenkirk. And Buchnevich has 2 assists so far, so maybe he could be like a 50-plus point guy potentially with this deployment. So basically, in conclusion, I should say, like, Zibanejad, you have to add. He shouldn't be a free agent in your league. He's looking really good. He even takes shots on goal, which I don't think a lot of people thought he does going into the season. But clearly he does, or at least he has so far. And then do you think if he's not available, if it's a deeper league and you can't get guys like Kreider and Zuccarello, do you take a jump into Pavel Buchnevich land?
It's like we're trying so hard to pronounce his name right that we're just butchering it in the process. We've done it Anyway, Mika Zibanejad, by the way, I'm not terribly surprised, even though I butchered my answer to you, my opportunity to act proud about knowing that Mika Zibanejad has taken a lot of shots this year. He started pretty strong last year. He was averaging more than 3 shots a game in October. That was his first 9 games of the year. The rest of the way really cooled down, but there was that moment, and that moment is happening again to start this year. Buchnevich, by the way, good to get excited about him, good to keep him on your radar. But please remember, Buchnevich was not in Alain Vigneault's good graces like for big chunks of last year. And he actually started the season with not dissimilar employment to what he's getting this season. The big question with Buchnevich is, will his minutes begin to fade as they did last year after a strong deployment start? In 2015-16, edit point. In 2016-17, he started seeing occasional low minutes in his 6th game, beginning at his 6th game, and then you saw a drastic reduction in his minutes before game 20. So if you want to take him for a spin, just make sure you're watching Buchnevich's time on ice numbers very carefully.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in someone's rookie season, they're not going to have as good deployment as once they have some more experience. So not to say that the past, is definitely going to predict the future, but like you say, something to watch, keep an eye on his ice time. I totally agree with you, Brian. But for people, obviously we'll have to see. It's a new year. Hopefully he's, gotten into shape. One of these guys who in the summertime has improved himself. We'll see. Good start to the year. And by the way, Zuccarello, even though he was bumped from the top line, doing just fine on line 2 with JT Miller and Rick Nash, like a goal, 4 assists in 3 games. Great stuff for Zuccarello. He's awesome. Okay, let's go to Philly now. Sean Couturier has held on to his primo spot, centering Giroux and Voracek. Not many people called this in the summer. You assume Giroux is going to be a center, but no, Giroux's gone to left wing. We'll see if he gets his, left wing eligibility in fantasy platforms soon. But yeah, Sean Couturier becomes someone who's probably available in your league if he hasn't been snapped up already. And he has 3 points in 3 games, 10 shots on goal. I imagine he should be at the top of people's watch lists, if not yet owned.
Sure.
Okay. Another guy, by the way, we said all summer long that Evgeny Dadonov should be great on the top power play and top line in Florida, and we were not wrong. A goal and 2 assists in 2 games so far. I'm not even going to ask this question. Like, Dadonov should be owned in all leagues, no question. I feel like there's no reason why he should be a free agent in any league.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to Boston. Bergeron and Backus have been out, so Boston's been running some interesting lines. In the first game, they had Krejci with Anders Bjork and Jake DeBrusk, and they killed it in the first game. Krejci had 3 assists. DeBrusk had a golden assist. Bjork had an assist. Of course, this all got washed away a little bit because today they all got blanked in the 4-0 loss to Colorado. Bjork had 3 shots on goal, so that's something. But yeah, how high are we on guys like Bjork and DeBrusk compared to, say, Vrana and Hartman? Like, are these free agent guys to watch or people that should be owned, like, right now?
I'm higher on the other guys than I am on DeBrusk and Bjork. And, okay, no, edit point. I'm higher on the other guys than I am on, edit point. I guess I don't need to say it twice. I'm higher on the other guys than I am on DeBrusk and Bjork.
Okay, well, wow, short answer so far. Maybe this one you'll have a longer one. But what's wrong with Bjork and DeBrusk? No, I'm just kidding. You probably don't want to get into it. Okay, Charlie McAvoy is another guy that people were excited about after the first game for Boston. He put up a goal and a power play assist in Krug's accent. Edit point. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to actually, and also I'll just take out that whole thing. Okay, about how I was like mocking your short answer.
No, you can.
Okay.
You can do it.
Okay, well, Brian, maybe you'll have more to say about this next guy on Boston. Charlie McAvoy is someone that people were really excited about going into the season, especially because Torrey Krug was injured, and he really did well in his first game. He definitely made everyone who was pumping up Charlie McAvoy feel pretty good. He had a goal and a power play assist in that first game of the season. He was the top power play defenseman. He played 22 minutes. All was great. Then today, Torrey Krug came back. And so maybe that changes things a little bit. Krug took back his even strength and power play minutes. So Charlie McAvoy had a dip. McAvoy only played 19 minutes and 28 seconds and was on the second power play unit. So I feel like at this point, maybe people need to lower their expectations a little bit. It doesn't seem like McAvoy has stolen Krug's job, though Boston didn't score a goal today. So who knows? Maybe they want to go back to McAvoy in the top unit, but probably not, right?
Probably not. Torrey Krug shouldn't have anything to worry about in terms of his spot being taken by Charlie McAvoy. But the operative word there is he shouldn't have anything to worry about. Of course, the Bruins know they have a sort of experienced, semi-proven to be capable replacement for Krug. But Krug is really one of my favorite power play quarterbacks and offensive defensemen with the amounts of shots that he puts on net and the amount of points he collects through assists, lots of them coming from rebounds that come off those shots. So I am definitely in the camp of Torrey Krug. If you have Charlie McAvoy, you can hang on for another week if you want and see. But I really expect that Torrey Krug should be the guy who goes the rest of the way.
Yeah, maybe McAvoy has upside to be like a Provorov, like still doing pretty well, even though he's not the top power play defenseman. But that would be also like really good. Like Provorov, I think, is helping you also in a lot of categories. We'll see what McAvoy can do. Maybe too bad we didn't do an episode after that first game, because then we could have said sell high at McAvoy because he had that first really good game.
Yeah. And Provorov is probably a pretty lofty goal for McAvoy. So I don't think you need to hang on to him hoping he's going to be that good.
Okay, so now let's go to Detroit, who, like I said when we were talking about Jimmy Howard, has had a really good start to the season. Mike Green had 4 assists, 2 on the power play in their first game. And then Mike Green had a more typical Mike Green game with no goals, no assists, and no shots against Ottawa. So I think that's his thing. He's sort of inconsistent, but he could help you in spurts with assists. I say you could maybe sell high on Mike Green if you can. Like if people are just going to look at his total numbers, obviously 4 points in 2 games looks amazing. I don't know what you could get for him though, but I'm not especially excited for him, even though he had that really great game. The people that I am kind of excited about are this line of Mantha, Dylan Larkin, and Martin Ferk, who's another guy, by the way, who I didn't know going into the season. All have had multiple points and a bunch of shots after these 2 games played. We were really excited about Mantha going into the season, and it seems like he's doing well. And perhaps Larkin can bounce back from a disappointing second season that he had last year. And Brian, who is Martin Ferk?
Oh, I want to talk about Mike Green edit point.
Talk about them all.
Okay, I will go backwards. Well, Martin Ferk, his agent, Alan Walsh, or at least former agent, I don't know who he's represented by currently, but Alan Walsh had told us all on Twitter years ago that he's Ferkin great. It was like a tweet that happened all the time when he was playing for, I think it was the Halifax Mooseheads in the Q. And Alan Walsh tweeted that about as long ago as when he was telling about how Andre was Pavolectric. So take Walsh's opinion with a grain of salt, of course. Ferk was a mid-second round pick back in 2012. He's 6 foot, Ugh. I'll start that whole part again. Ferk was a mid-second rounder back in 2012, 24 years old. He just turned 24, stands 6 feet, 200 pounds, for those who want to know that much. He's taken a long route to get to the NHL. 4 years in the minors, including 2 stints in the ECHL. He was claimed off waivers by Detroit from Carolina, who claimed him off waivers from Detroit the year prior. Recently, he's been doing all right in the AHL, though. 94 points in 132 AHL games played over the last 2 seasons, and he's been amongst the Grand Rapids Griffins' top scorers both years. He scored the Calder Cup game-winning goal last season, but none of this tells you what you want to know. Is he going to be good for the Red Wings this year? Well, what he's known for, as far as I can tell, is having a great shot, but not much else, and really hadn't expected to see a whole lot from him at the start of this season, even though he did make the team to begin. Maybe Ferk can edge out a place in Detroit's top 6 for himself with his big shot, as the Red Wings are sort of in desperate need of legit scoring threats, but it sounds like he's also going to have to keep the rest of his game in good shape as well to maintain that spot. As for what you said about Mike Green, Elon, we referenced some early season magic before. He's one of those guys. Last year, he had 7 points in his first 5 games, and then he was a 35-point pace the rest of the way, which sounds decent, but there were still long spells of despairingly poor production, and were definitely a far cry from what you expected after those 7 points in his first 5 games. So I still expect this season to go the same direction. Maybe he'll start hot, but he doesn't have any new opportunity this year that he didn't have last year. So I'm not counting on more than a 35-point pace for most of the way from Mike Green. And I think you mentioned Dylan Larkin, Elon, about whether he can keep it up now. He can. He's off to a good start. I'm not counting on him returning to what he was able to do in his rookie season, but I'm not going to count him out either.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to watch and see how this line goes. 2 games. It's really hard. We're doing our best here, guys. We're just throwing a bunch of names at you that you can add to your watch list. Again, maybe tweet at us, give us a couple more games, and we could try to help you out to make these decisions of who to add. Let's end the show, Brian, in St. Louis. Great start to the year for this team. 5-4 win over Pittsburgh, a 4-2 win over Dallas, and then they won 3-2 today over the Islanders. Lots of standouts so far, but the one who may be available in your league still is Vladimir Sabatka, who's been on line 1 with Stastny and Tarasenko. I don't think a lot of people called that. A lot of people thought maybe Shen would play with Tarasenko, but no, it's Sabatka, and he has 3 assists in 3 games so far. No shots in the first couple of games, but 4 shots today. I'm not really sure if he's supposed to be a shooter or not. He hasn't been in the NHL for very long. He was in the KHL for a long time. Is Sabatka a guy you would take a flyer on as long as he's playing with Vladimir Tarasenko?
Sure. Of course I would. He's playing with Tarasenko. That is a money spot to be, so go ahead.
Okay, and then obviously don't do that and take Paul Stastny. Instead, if Stastny is available in free agency, he's the one also on line 1 with Tarasenko, but he's also on power play 1 with Tarasenko. 4 points in 3 games after another assist today. Stastny's always been someone who's been kind of inconsistent and seems to be at the top of free agency in a lot of leagues, but just it's a really great situation to be in. I feel like as long as he's there, he should probably be owned.
Yes.
And I see your edit point. You were like sitting back so far. I didn't know how you would get in time.
You were talking about Stastny though, right?
Yeah. Well, did you just like take a nap?
No.
You were so far away.
I was paying attention.
Okay, this is an edit point, Jade. Yeah, I said
I'm
Stastny.
Yes.
I said that he should probably be. Oh no, you have a whole nice thing written about him. Say your whole thing.
Stastny? No, I don't.
You said something on Facebook then about how he tends to go up and down the lineup.
Oh. Okay.
I said he should probably be owned as long as he's on top line, top power play.
Okay. Let me find that. You're right. I did write about him, and I didn't transfer it to the doc.
Okay. You don't remember what you said?
I mean, I can guess at it, but...
All right, that's okay. I'll look at some scores. Leafs just tied the game against Chicago. JVR. Is Bozak going to get an assist? On ESPN, it's showing unassisted. I feel like I'd rather them just like not... I don't know. It's frustrating when it says unassisted, but you know it probably wasn't. Who scores a power play goal unassisted? Anyway, I don't know what they should do instead. They should say like not ready yet or something, like unknown. Don't say unassisted. I know it wasn't. You're lying, ESPN. Bozak assist.
Someone knows.
I could have taken Bozak today instead of Ryan Hartman. Ugh, what a bad move in the cupful. It's gonna cost me the championship.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, Stasny can do well when deployed well, but he gets moved around the lineup often to take on different roles, so he looks good at the moment. But if I recall correctly, the same thing happened last year where he started off in a great spot, got moved around, and of course his value changed significantly as he got moved around the lineup. So the same way you're watching Buchnevic's minutes, you've got to watch Stasny's line combinations and Okposo's line combinations. That's a better analogy.
Yeah, so I think Stasny right now is definitely someone I would rather have over Kyle Okposo. The more we talk about it, so Brian, I think we should drop Okposo for Stasny in our Dynasty League. We'll talk about that after this, and it's called Dynasty League, but it's only keep four. The guy who named this league is kind of well, whatever. He's doing his best, as Brian would say. I wish him all the best. But okay, a guy who could potentially compete with Paul Stasny to be on that top line instead of him is Braden Shen, who's having a nice start to the year himself. 4 points in 3 games. Nothing today though, but maybe Dauber was right with his 70-point prediction. I thought it seemed a little high, but Shen's definitely starting strong, and he's on that top power play, so it's possible.
No, I'm just gonna say I don't think it's possible. I get the spirit of the prediction. However, 70 points would, again, I feel like we've taken on. Thank you to Dauber for making this prediction and providing us with must be a combined like 25 minutes of content by now. It would be a real leap from Shen's career history to suddenly become a 70-point guy at this point in his career. Yeah, he could have good deployment at even strength. Yeah, he could help on that power play. But remember, he's coming from a killer power play in Philadelphia, or what was often a killer power play in Philadelphia, and still just managed around the 55-point mark with those power play points already. So he's going to have to take a huge leap at even strength to get all the way up to 70.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. But still, the people who drafted him must be happy at the moment, especially in a hits league, because he helps you there as well. All right, Brian, let's maybe end it. Last guy I want to talk about, guy I guess mentioned, Jake Allen. Another huge game today. Stopped 40 out of 42 shots to go along with his 38 saves versus Dallas on Saturday. He's got a 930 save percentage in 3 games. If your league count saves, he's probably helping you win that category. Like, it's worth like 2 starts from another goalie with these Jake Allen starts. Looking really good. Yeah. So he's one of the guys, there was a lot of goalies we listed that I remember we had in our party tier in Schmore Goalies Borg of like guys who could be good, maybe will be, maybe won't be. Tuukka Rask was there. And I guess people who drafted Rask over Allen are probably wishing they had Allen right now.
Yeah. Allen is the guy who could be good, but often, well, he doesn't choose not to be, but he really struggled last year at times. The interesting thing is that I thought St. Louis would have their defensive game a little more together, and that if Jake Allen succeeded, it would be in low volume games more than high. Not to say he wouldn't excel in high volume games at all, but I just wasn't expecting him to need to stop 40 shots on goal. Historically, that's not been the job of St. Louis Blues goaltender. Good for him for handling it so far. I imagine things will settle down in St. Louis, whereas, I said the same thing about Colorado before, where it's high volume now. St. Louis is more likely to calm down into reasonable shots against numbers, and that would be good for Allen.
Well, I guess it depends. It's good, but it helps you get a high save percentage and a high number of saves if you're having a lot of shots against. But you have to be able to stop those shots. Could hurt your goals against average. So it kind of depends what stats you're talking about. But yeah, it would be good for the team overall, and probably better for them to get wins if they weren't letting in as many shots. Okay, Brian, we've just talked about I think like 50 players at least. So I think that's a good time to stop it. What a fun first, not even week. It's been like 5 days of hockey, and it's been a blast. Next week we'll be back at you with a full week's show worth of content, but you can get content even sooner than next Sunday because patrons of because patrons of Keeping Karlsson get a bonus show every week. So if you're a patron of Keeping Karlsson, you're going to get our special patron-only show this Thursday. So it's a program that we have out there for people to help support the show, and we give you a lot of perks. The extra bonus content is just one of many. So check it out, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. We'd love to have you on board for this season. And if you like the show, check it out.
You should also give us a 5-star iTunes review if you haven't already. Well, I mean, I said you should. That might be a little strong. We would really, really appreciate it if you did. Those help us get noticed on iTunes. And the more noticed we are, the more listenership we get. And the more listenership we get, the closer we are to opening our premium craft beer and nachos restaurant.
Yes, that would be great. Okay, so to recap, I guess that's it, right? Thank you everyone for listening. It's the first, regular show of the season. I had a blast, and we'd love to hear your feedback, know what you like. We've got a long season ahead, and we plan to just keep bringing you the content every single week, twice a week for the patrons. So once again, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. If you give us if you could give us a 5-star iTunes review, that would be amazing. And with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. And why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right, I'm going to throw one more link out there before I get to the credits. Elon, FanDuel.com/KARL. Join us starting Wednesday night to compete against us Thursday in a daily fantasy contest. We would love to see you there. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and supported by our patrons, including our most recent ones, Mike H., Kyle W., Arvind R., and someone with the username XPingu. So thanks for that. It was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dauber Prospects, Corsica, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Great job as always, Brian. We'll be back with another regular episode next Sunday, 7 p.m. That's our regular time moving forward. You could join us live, keepingkarlsson.com/live, and we'll also have our weekly mailbag show for the patrons Thursday at, I think it's 7:30 p.m., but we'll let all of the patrons know through Patreon.
Wait, Elon, you've said something about an extra show this week?
I said that already. What are you talking about?
I'm teasing you. It's like the 9th time.
All right. Let's end it. Good job, Brian. We'll catch you all next week.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
All right. Well, there we go. First show of the year in the books. Can I make a small? You did an amazing job. Can I make a small little thing?
No.
It kind of stresses. Oh, okay.
I'm very sensitive.
No, this was not that bad.
Okay.
But it kind of stresses me out when I'm talking and I'm almost done and I know you're gonna have to jump in and you're so far away, and it's because you're not editing points, right? So now all the listeners are gonna have this long pause while you approach the microphone. Remember, I'm not going through, so you should be there. Get a more comfortable chair.
Did that really happen a lot?
Near the end of the show, it was every single time I was talking.
But was there actually a long pause, or were you just nervous that there would be a long pause?
Probably not a long pause, but maybe a slightly more noticeable pause than usual.
A nanosecond longer. Okay, I will try and sit up straighter.
Well, what kind of chair is that you're so far away?
It's a nice chair.
You shouldn't get one.
It leans back and forth.
Yeah, get one of those, or it should have a knob where you can lock it in up, so you're up close to the microphone.
I like this chair.
That's a nice chair. No, I'm just saying that maybe
I will sit at attention.
Okay.
To make the show better.
Thank you. Okay, this chat room was hilarious also.
Yeah, I actually, Elon, we definitely should have I meant to it's a lot of fun. It's a big part of the experience. People should, it's a great group. I wouldn't want it to get diluted, of course, but keepingkarlsson.com/live, we should.
Okay.
It enhances the show, so thank you everyone who's in it.
Yeah, well, whatever. We don't have to promote it that much. We don't get anything extra. It's clearly it's good how it is. So just maybe this is the group we want to go forward with for the rest of the year.
Okay, no, we'll only send out invites to them, and everyone else, no access.
Okay. Well, we mentioned at the end of the show, but yeah, this was a lot. Yeah.
Matt actually mentioned something that I've meant to mention. So maybe the elite chat room group wants to help with this. I've been meaning to post in the Facebook group or mention on one of the extra shows or whatever that I'm looking for stuff to put up on the wall behind me. I know it's ugly, but now that I have my more or less permanent setup here, I want some stuff up there. So if anybody wants to send some fun things that could go up there my way, then I bought
this with my money. Why can't you just
Sorry, let me clarify. Not send the actual things to me, but send me the ideas, because often you guys have much better ideas than I'm capable of. And especially design is not my forte. So, Elon, what do you have?
I have these toys, but I don't know how to fit them in. So I sort of have them off camera, which is pretty useless.
Well,
I got this Eric Carlson.
Yeah.
And then I've got my bell here. That's also a beer opener with all of my goalie tears.
Oh my God. The goalie.
I'm going to move. But don't you think that, Brian, I'm not so crazy saying that Carey Price is no longer an elite goalie. Like, I don't think that much. I think Montreal's in a lot of trouble. Did you watch these games? Like, they kind of
His save percentage, like his consistency in save percentage, can win you that category every week.
You know what, Brian? I owned him last year, and he didn't like consistently win me save percentage every week. He won me save percentage maybe like half the weeks, and then the other half of the weeks he was average, or maybe there was like, and then there were some weeks where he actually was bad. Like, he wasn't like so like. I'm pretty sure there were other goalies that had higher save percentages than him last year. Like, he's top 5. I don't think he's like guaranteed top save percentage. No one's close. I think you're a little. I think you're wrong.
I get that, like, and I thought to mention it on the show. I think you're scarred from owning him last year. I think that really hurt you. And maybe I think the question is more, what's the value of an elite goalie, like of a tier 1 goalie over a tier 2 goalie? And our advice this year was to skip tier 1, to not reach for one of those guys. They're rarely worth it where you draft them. But if you already own one, like, you should make sure you're getting value. Elon, oh, sorry, you can answer.
Okay, well, no, I'll just comment to what you're saying. Like, I think that he's not tier 1. I still stand by it because I don't think he's going to get a lot of wins, and I think his save percentage will be similar to some people in tier 2. So, okay, behind me, it's Katia Polo, so you can go to her website. It's the Canadian Periodic Table of Elements, and it's like a bunch of Canadian hockey players, so it's pretty cool. And they're split up by what province they're from. That's kind of fun.
And the Katia Polo designed our new logo also.
Yeah, so she's very
connection there.
Prolific. All right, I guess we can end this.
Suggesting a shirt.
We have shirts.
No, a picture of me with "worth a squirt" under it.
To have behind you? Sure.
We're developing a vocabulary for sure.
I don't want "worth a squirt." I don't want that to be in our vocabulary. It's a gross saying. I'm surprised you say it.
You wrote me a question yesterday on G Talk. You said, is someone worth a squirt?
I 100% did not.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna send you the link to the screenshot, and then I want you to share it with everyone else.
Okay. What does that mean? Why don't you do it?
Because I can't paste it to the group.
Okay. So, by the way, Jade, I don't know, people, you guys could leave, by the way, like the show's over, but like if you want to stick around, yeah, Brian will send it to me, then we'll send. If I said it as a joke. Okay, maybe I said it to you, but as a joke because you know I hate it.
Oh, so like, wait, you're backing off already.
Now I'm starting to have a memory that maybe I did.
You definitely. I want everyone to see it. I screenshotted it for that reason.
All right. So Jade, I guess you'll send me the doc with all the timestamps, and then we'll see how this goes. I guess if like once the show's released, if people listen and they hear like a part where we say edit point, I think I could edit and then. I don't know. Let's hopefully not. Next week we'll try something different. But thanks so much again, Jade. If you could just send me that, that'd be awesome. I'll get to work right away. Brian, why don't we stop why don't we stop right now?
No, I need to deliver. If only you gave me permission to share links in the chat.
Okay, you tell me how, and I'll do it. Like, you say it as if like I have this big console of all of these different places and knobs and things where I can go and control things.
Well, you're the moderator. I'm sure you have a setting.
It's not. I'm looking at the list of. I have manage moderators, participants, toggle timestamps, and send feedback. Those are all of my options. And I could click on a specific comment and say go to channel, report, remove, put user in timeout, block, or add moderator. So I can add you as a moderator, I guess.
Oh my gosh, the thing I've been suggesting for over a year in those exact words.
Okay, so make a comment in the
Do you know
chat.
Sometimes I get shut out of the chat because it tells me I'm talking too much?
All right, so write a comment right now and I'll add you as a moderator.
Write a comment where?
In the chat. Like I have to click on the person. That's the only way to do it. Okay, comment. Now add moderator. Okay, you're a moderator. So now we know how. I never clicked on the thing beside the people before. The only time I ever clicked.
I've been begging you for years.
Well, I didn't know how. Oh, look at you. Now you have a little wrench beside your name.
I get a wrench.
Rust probably worth a squirt now. He's with Crosby. I was joking around.
We did it. We did it, everyone.
All right. I'm gonna go. So thanks again. I think it was a good show, right?
I think so.
Covered a lot of players. But I think it's like the good amount, right? Like I feel like we could get this out in an hour and a half every week, this many players. Or maybe we'll do a fewer players next week, since maybe you'll want to go deeper into some people. We'll discuss. We also have to come up with our plan for Thursday and our mailbag show. But let's just take a break tonight, post this, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I guess you'll do the write-up. I'll do the edit, which will hopefully be easier, thanks to Jade. And okay, bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.